So, production is something that's overlooked by a lot of the Eminem semen swallowing midgets who also like to refer to themselves as hip hop heads, who favor the MC and their lyrical ability. But in my opinion, 50% of how enjoyable or entertaining a song is comes from how good or interesting the production is. And recently, producers have been getting a lot more and much deserved love and respect, so I thought that it would be a good idea to go over some of the best produced hip hop albums in my opinion. Now, before I start, I kind of made a rule that I can only include one album per artist because I don't want this list to just be made up of Vince Staples and Kanye West. And I've also not included instrumental albums because I'm not too well versed in that specific subgenre, so I definitely leave out an album that deserves a spot. So, coming in at number 10 is Blue and Exile's Below the Heavens. Now, straight off the bat, I might ruffle some feathers with this pick because a lot of people prefer the production on Miles, and I do understand that pick, and I went back and forth as to which I should include on this list, and Below the Heavens slightly edged it out. The production manages to sound grand and luxurious, and yet still have a laid-back vibe to them, but they are still really interesting and attention-grabbing. The production also suits blues subject matter throughout the LP. The beats sound tailor-made for blues boys, and they both complement each other extremely well. Some of my favorite beats on here are the ones used in Remembrance of Me, My World Is, which even by just saying the name of makes the female vocal sample that says blue throughout the entire track get stuck in my head, and I'm also really a big fan of No Greater Love. In the 9th spots is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. If I had to sum up how the production sounds on this album in one word, it would be luxurious. The album just sounds rich, and when I say rich, I mean rich as in having a lot of money, and not rich as in being extremely layered, even though the instrumentals on here are very layered. Listening to this instrumentals on this is what I imagine two white lions having sex with Durex Intense condoms on a Burberry Prozum poncho placed over the seats of a Pagani Zonda that's in the parking lot of a 5-star hotel in Dubai sounds. So basically I'm trying to say that it sounds really expensive. I don't know why I chose to word it like that, but anyway, moving on. Every beat sounds grand and theatrical, and it perfectly suits the melodramatic tone of the album, as well as its subject matter, which basically revolves around the negatives of being a celebrity. I literally can't say anything about this album that hasn't already been said. I love the violin solo that perfectly transitions into the beat for All of the Lights, the iconic Smokey Robinson sample on Devil in a New Dress, and he even managed to make Miley Cyrus sound fantastic, which is a huge feat. At number 8 is Common's B. Why? Because of the beats like the ones used on Go, Love Is, The Food, and It's Your World. Also because it's produced by Kanye West and Jay Dilla, which are two of the most highly regarded producers and samplers of all time, and they absolutely did not disappoint with this album. At lucky number 7 is The Big Fish Theory by Vince Staples. Vince Staples has basically made a career out of having an amazing ear for beats. Ramona Park Broke My Heart has some of my favorite beats of the year, the more laid-back vibe of his self-title was amazing, and FM was easily the best produced album of 2018, but when it was released, people were disappointed with its production because it followed the Big Fish Theory. Literally every beat on the Big Fish Theory is fantastic, unique, and sounds amazing with whatever vocal delivery Vince chooses to use. Just outside the top 5 is Travis Scott's Astroworld. I have 2 words for you. Beat switches. Beat switches are one of my favorite things in hip-hop, and this album is full of them, and every single one feels perfectly placed, perfectly transitioned into, and every beat is amazing. Now personally, I haven't been on an LSD trip or any form of drug trip, so I don't really know how that feels, but this is probably what I would assume it feels like, and this is probably the closest thing we get to a perfect acid trip emulator. Bringing us to the halfway point in our list is Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. The production on this album is perfect. The album perfectly incorporates elements of jazz, funk, and soul. The sampling is fantastic, and the decision to incorporate more live music was a brilliant one. Even the traditional boom-bap style beats like Black at the Berry still sound incredibly unique and special, and the perfect production helps to elevate Kendrick's perfect deliveries, themes, and messages. Coming in at number 4 is Dr. Dre's The Chronic 2001. Personally, I prefer the production on the original The Chronic, Doggy Style, and even Get Rich or Die Trying much more than the beats on 2001, but the reason I chose this over the others is because it's the best mixed and mastered album of all time. A lot of albums from the late 90s or early 2000s have this sort of washed out effect on their vocals and just sound really old, but if I was to to play The Chronic 2001 to someone who's never heard it, they'd probably just assume it was recorded in today's age and is just paying homage to older G-Funk sound, way before that they'd assume that it was released all the way back in 2000. Taking us into the top 3 is Visions of Bodies Being Burned by Clipping. Now, Clipping is probably one of my favorite hip-hop groups of all time, but I did not enjoy this album. I was really disappointed by it because horrorcore really isn't for me. I don't really get what's to like about this subgenre, but the production on this album is fucking fantastic. It's probably the best produced experimental album in my opinion, and there's a lot of times where I just want to listen to the instrumentals on it. The production style is a bit of an acquired taste, but if you're someone like me who loves noise and industrial rap, the production on this album will blow you away. Some of my favorite beats on here are the ones used on Something Underneath, She Bad, and Eaten Alive. In the runner-up position is The Blueprint by Jay-Z. Just Blaze, Kanye, and Bink crafted some of the most beautiful and iconic beats of all time. This album contains probably my favorite use of soul samples of all time as well. Even Renegade's beats is fantastic and probably the only good beat Eminem has ever produced. Literally almost every beat on this album is iconic, and there's a lot of people who say that the production outshines Jay-Z, and I mean, if you're able to outshine one of the best rappers of all time, that is an incredible feat. At the number 1 spot is Mad Villainy by Madlib. All Caps is the best beats of all time. I do not want to hear it. The dude even managed to make an accordion sound good. Fancy Clown has an amazing vocal sample in the background, and not hearing MF Doom rap over Supervillain theme and Sickford was extremely disappointing because of how phenomenal they sounded.